Welcome everyone to this AAEA CWAE and Professional Services Committee webinar entitled Field Notes from Industry: How Agricultural Economists Are Shaping Business, Policy, and Beyond. We're really excited to have you here today, and we are excited to share our little nuggets. Today we want to shine a light on your peers working in industry positions, browsing their field notes for nuggets of wit and wisdom in navigating the profession and succeeding in your career as an applied economist. For this webinar, we are defining industry positions as roles outside of traditional academia and government, with an understanding that the term industry is a bit gray around the edges and encompasses many roles that might be lumped with academia or government most days. My name is Tori Laird. In addition to being your moderator today, I'm also an ag economist creating insights at the intersection of water and agriculture in my current role at ERA Economics, a consulting firm based out of Davis, California. I previously worked in the agricultural sector before going on to graduate school and state government and eventually landing in consulting. I'm joined by my lovely and brilliant panelists, Shefali Mehta, founder and principal of Open Rivers Consulting Associates, Kyle Maple, Director of Asset Management at the U.S. Agriculture LLC, and Carly Trachtman, Research Fellow in the Markets, Trade, and Institutions Unit of the International Food Policy Research Institute, also known as IFPRI. You'll get to hear more about their journeys here and insights soon, but first, a few housekeeping notes on this discussion today. We'll spend the rest of the hour in a fireside chat style discussion exploring the career highlights, journeys, and field notes from our panelists. During this portion of the program, please keep your microphone muted to help everyone hear the conversation. This portion will be recorded and posted to the AAEA YouTube channel later on. Afterwards, we'll have about 30 minutes of Q&A during our mentorship mingle, where we'll get to hear from you. What burning questions do you have for our panelists today? This will be the time to add your questions to the chat or to raise your virtual hand to be called on. Let's get started. So, to my lovely and brilliant panelists, let's take a round and ask to introduce yourself and give us a brief overview of your current role. And I'll tack on to a little question on that. What do you love about your role? What makes you get out and go to work every day? We'll start with Carly, go to Kyle, and end with Shefali.
Great, thank you, Tori. Hi, everyone, welcome. As Tori said, I'm a research fellow at IFPRI. And so in my current role, maybe out of the three of us here, it's probably the most similar to your standard academic or government role, in that we are a nonprofit research institution. So a lot of my current role is essentially just working throughout the entire pipeline of the research project of creating policy research. So I do everything in my role from, writing grants, applying for funding, to designing experiments and other research designs, implementing them in the field, writing up the results, and then publishing them both sort of in the academic sphere in journals, and then also in policy dissemination forums, including written and also workshops and the like. Something that I absolutely love about my job is that I get to work in agriculture development, which is sort of the core bread and butter of IFPRI. In case you're not familiar with us, we kind of tackle food policy in developing countries. So that can include sort of the more social protection side, the more agricultural production side. And so these are issues that I really care a lot about. And so that's kind of my favorite thing. I think I got all your questions, Tori. Let me know if not.
You're rocking it. You hit it out of the park.
Okay,
Don't worry,
thank you.
Carly. Kyle, why don't you introduce yourself next?
Hey, thanks for letting me join everyone today. Looking forward to the discussion. Um, like Tori said, my name's Kyle Maple. I work for a privately held farmland investment company based in central Indiana. I've actually been with the company since graduating in undergraduate back in 2011, and so have been here since the genesis. But the company's goal is to go and build farmland portfolios for a variety of clients and manage those portfolios. Um, just been a really exciting opportunity for me my whole career. And currently I'm serving in the role of Director of Asset Management. So I oversee our acquisition and farm management departments. Um, what I love about my career is we do that across the United States. So I see a wide variety of ag production systems and just get a lot of joy out of that. I'm a farm kid from central Indiana, and so getting to experience different crops and also different ways of going about and raising those crops has been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kyle. Shefali?
Yeah. Hi, all. It's awesome to be here. And thanks to Tori, Shelley, Jessica, and the whole CWAE committee for bringing us together. I love that we're investing in these type of discussions in our community. So I answer kind of both questions simultaneously about what I'm excited about and a little bit about myself is I think I've been an economist my whole life. I didn't know what it was called as a kid, but I love like looking at how things come together and connect. I wanted to work with plants and animals, but I also really wanted freedom to do what I wanted. And I think that fundamentally took me to starting up my own business. This is actually my 9-year anniversary this month of founding Open Rivers, and it is a joy to get to like work with amazing people, do this. I've studied economics, statistics all the way through. It's been really lovely to get to learn from so many different people. I've also had the chance to work through different sectors. And really, that's the goal of Open Rivers is being able to bring like that kind of mindset and connection to different sectors, different geographies. And it's still guided by the same mission where I started, which is how can I use economics as like my overall toolkit to solve like really critical questions for the environment and communities, and how can we really work together in using that. And I think that's been the thread over the last 2 decades. So I feel really grateful. It's been a really cool journey, and I'm excited to be here today to reflect with all of you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, to continue this thread of field notes from industry, I once heard a field note that a dream job is any job that allows you to live your dream life. How would you describe your lifestyle? For example, can you give us what a day in the life looks like for you in your current role, or what gets you excited to get out and go do what you do every day? Open popcorn here.
I'll hop in. For me, my day seems to always transition to something new, which is exciting. I don't get too monotonous in what I do on a day-to-day basis, but a lot of what I do is evaluating new investment opportunities with our field staff and seeing if they meet our clients' risk return or our internal own risk return profile for each individual opportunity. And then a lot of times going out in the field, meeting with the operators themselves, the farmers that we work with, and making sure we're trying to set up win-win opportunities for us and them. And so I, that's what I love. Probably the thing that gets me the most joy is I don't sit still very long. So being able to get out in the field, interact with people is great. I do like going through the math of a discounted cash flow and seeing what makes sense and trying to identify the risks and problem solve in that manner is exciting. So being able to do both of them though, if I didn't have that balance, I'd probably struggle.
Amen.
I can go next. So, as I alluded to a little bit in the introduction, my day can look really different depending on what I'm working on at the time. Usually with some mix of different research tasks that are all kind of going on in a bunch of different projects at the same time. But some days I'm in my office or at my house, just kind of answering emails and working on estimation and things like that. And then other days I'm literally out in the field, talking to farmers, trying to implement surveys, or also talking to policymakers, right? So designing projects in consultation with stakeholders or communicating results. So I think that that's honestly one of the things I love about it is, I mean, I get to travel a lot. I was telling them I literally got back from Ethiopia yesterday. So that's, an exciting part of the job for me because I love to see the world and talk to people. And so I think that's kind of one of the major highlights. But yeah, I mean, it can be a mix of things, like I said. Thanks.
And I think similar to Kyle and Carly shared is that it's, every day is different and there are so many different folks we get to work with. And I think that's, again, the beauty of the toolkit we have that's like economics is we can apply it in such a diverse way. And it has the ability to go like really go deep into the numbers, into the research. We get to work with different stakeholders. And may I just share an additional, so about the end of 22, I came to this really interesting crossroads. I actually returned to Open Rivers and it was like version 3. And I thought, what do I do now? And I had a really interesting moment of reflection when I was like, well, I think I did everything I meant to do, which was a really weird feeling. I'm like, I had the experiences, the goals, like things I wanted to connect with. And I'm like, oh, I could retire now. I mean, maybe financially, probably not, but like other ways, I was like, oh, it's over. So it was a really wild point for 23 to go, well, now what? It's like, and so I basically hit a reset. I didn't really start over, but it's like I went to it with like really fresh eyes and like a beginner's mind. And so I was like, how do I take everything, but like really come to the same kind of mission and goal of like serving community, serving the environment, just working with really diverse stakeholders and my joy. And that's why I really kind of got clear on like, where is my joy really come from that fulfilling? It's working with people. And I think when I knew going in, like I loved economics, all my degrees are basically economics. It was just academia wasn't necessarily the fit just because I love the research and teaching, but I like need to be in the field. Even my dissertation, I was like, I want to be with the forestry managers. I was like out with the lion teams. It was very like, it was so clear. And so I think that anytime if I look at my days, I'm working with the individuals and the teams. And a big focus of my effort, it's strategy, consulting, and implementation. The implementation piece is org and operational transformation. So whether it was private sector, government, I'll say really academia, nonprofits, it's really working with teams and individuals. And I get real fulfillment out of seeing the individual kind of like, I would say that my goal is to unleash the potential for folks to really like deliver their mission. And that's where I find that joy. And so every day it's like it's almost like how do I get to that? Whether it's speaking with people, being a cheerleader, helping them work through difficult problems, like doing project management, like taking meeting notes, like you name it, it's everything and anything. It's reading data, it's doing it. It's just how can I support these clients and collaborators so that they really take off and do their best. And that's I'm gonna say the last 3 years have been fully steeped in that, and it's been quite a joy.
What do you think is the most surprising thing about your role right now? What do you think would surprise someone if they're saying, "Hey, what do you do?" And I always have to explain what an economist means when someone asks me on the street, "What do you do?" But what's the most surprising thing you think about to an economist or non-economist when you look at your role of like, that's kind of unexpected?
I can jump in because I kind of ended with what changes. One of the pivots was going, I love research, and we did a lot of research support and we work with amazing groups like World Bank and Foundation for Food and Ag Research. I had colleagues at IFPRI, but I realized that like for me personally, it's like writing research and doing that is great. I really want to be with people. And I think the thing that surprises me is the amount of time I spend with people, like, and the amount of new people I meet on a daily, weekly, and annual basis. Like during COVID, we were actually counting as my team. It was like there were hundreds of people we met and formed close relationships. I still haven't met in person. It's just amazing. Like it's just every month, every year, when I compare year to year, it's different. So I think one of the pieces that I think shocks a lot of people is when I say I'm an economist using this toolkit and I'm constantly just meeting different people, different roles. I get to work across many continents. They're just shocked because it's like, how is it? And it's actually the flip. It's like economics really lends itself naturally to that kind of engagement.
Shefali, something you said actually struck a chord with me. Our firm isn't very big, and when you mentioned touching everything, like I do a little bit of everything. There was a point in time I oversaw our IT, which is a very scary thing, and luckily we've outsourced that. But I do think that's probably another avenue of where it can be exciting as well. I mean, that I'm probably well, I am the first one to go through and try to get the correct legal terms that we want in a new lease or purchase contract, and certainly run that through an attorney after the fact. But I'm touching legal, I'm touching investment decisions, I'm touching relationships. So the diversity of it is, I don't know, it's very exciting, and sometimes it includes extremely menial tasks to some, but that's just doing your part for a small company, and you have to be able to wear many hats.
Yeah, I guess to jump in, maybe similar, I also perhaps do more things than I than I realized I was going to be able to do or that I would need to do. And that I work with experts of a lot of different types. I mean, economists tend to be somewhat insular at times. We like think we're the best and don't want to talk to anyone else. But I've learned a lot talking to like plant breeders, for example. But maybe the other thing that I think sometimes like strikes people when I talk to them is I think maybe sometimes there's this sense that if you want to kind of do your own really creative, rigorous research, you like have to be in the academia setting because like that's really where the only place where you'll get that freedom. And I don't really think that's true. Like I think there's a lot of other opportunities, including, my current role at IFPRI is, even though we're thinking about funders and what donors want, there's a lot of I think potential and scope for trying to be creative and do things that both you find interesting personally, but also that's going to be useful to someone who's making policy or trying to decide what interventions to fund or the like. So that's been a pleasant surprise, and something I think is like worth knowing.
It sounds like each of you have a different perspective on where what the surprising thing is, but yet at the same time they all connect in a little small way. But my next question is I'm gonna offer it to Kyle first of, well, these things are really cool, but how'd you get here? So often when you go into a graduate program, it's very much saying, hey, there's government jobs and there's academia jobs. And you're like, but is there something else too? So my question I'll throw out to Kyle first is, how'd you get here? What has been your professional journey so far?
Probably the unique one on this call, and the fact that I started in industry, as we'll define it today, immediately after undergraduate, and have worked for the same firm essentially for the past 14 years. So when I took the job, a lot of times coming out of an agricultural economic undergrad program, there's sales positions and things of that nature. This position opened in a farmland investment shop. It was right after it had the genesis of the company. And so to me, it was just being a 21, 22-year-old kid that thought, hey man, traveling the United States and seeing agriculture would be a lot of fun. Let's try that. And then once I got here, I learned finance is really interesting, and problem solving and making sure you evaluate risk appropriately is very interesting. And so I just built on that. And then eventually, there was a point in my career that I would say I felt a little stuck in the mud. I wasn't advancing, and decided to go back and do a joint MS in ag economics from Purdue University and an MBA from Indiana University. They have a program that's joint together, and completed that, and it really helped boost me to my current role today. Made me realize that boy, there's more here to myself and my ability to help our firm than what I originally anticipated. So really, it was just trying to take a different path than the typical sales route that comes from a Purdue University undergraduate in ag economics. And then I just fell in love with the opportunity to, as a similar theme as everybody else, meet new people, again, see different ag production systems. It provided the perfect fit of what I was looking for in a career.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Carly, let's hear from you next.
Sure. So I guess I came to my interest in economics from just like the very nerdy side of things. Like I've always been intellectually very interested in the idea of economics, kind of similar to what Shefali was saying earlier, where it's like you're doing economics before you actually know what that means. So basically, I got, interested in high school, honestly, in economics and was like, great, this is what I'm going to major in. Went through college, and as I was studying, I was like, I think research, that would be really interesting. Like, I want to learn more. And like kind of came to development and agriculture by accident, just in talking to like a faculty member there about what he was working on, was like, yeah, sure, like let me work on this and learn a little bit. And it ended up being something that I just like fell in love with. It was kind of like one of those things where when you start understanding like how some people live in the world, and it's really hard to like think about anything else. And so that's kind of what motivated me to keep working in the development agriculture space. I basically went right after undergrad to right into my PhD program, which I mean has its pros and its cons. So you definitely need to do what's right for you. But essentially, I went like straight from liberal arts college to the Ag Econ department at UC Berkeley, and finished my PhD in like 6 years during the pandemic. Um, but then right after that, essentially started at IFPRI like a month after I graduated and have been there ever since. That was in 2022. So been IFPRI like 4 years almost. Um, but what else was I going to say? Yeah, I mean, I think that when I was looking at jobs, I wasn't saying like, oh, I definitely want to fall in this space or in that space. I applied to academic jobs, I applied to policy jobs, I applied to government jobs. And I think just, as I was looking about what would be sort of the best fit for me, this is what I gravitated towards. And of course, I sought out advice from lots of people in my department, and everyone has their different preferences, especially faculty who are academicians themselves, right? And so if there are things that are more in the pipeline to getting like a nice professorship position, certainly some faculty are going to be like, yeah, you should definitely do that. But ultimately, you have to do what's right for you and your lifestyle. And IFPRI seemed like the best fit for me, and so that's kind of how I ended up there. And I really like what I do, so it worked out well so far.
That's the important part, right? Shefali, tell us a little bit about your journey here.
Sure. And it's so interesting, like reflecting on like Carly and Kyle, like how even though we had three different paths, there are a lot of commonalities and like and how we approach it, how we think. Because like one of the themes is it's like the calling, like the vocation. Like you find the thing because you're when we're paying attention. It's a combination of like luck, happenstance, and like paying attention to like what's exciting us and what's going. And it's kind of cool how that path unravels. And I think and like leads us forward. Because I think of it's been almost 20 years since I finished my PhD, which makes me feel older than maybe I am, but it's been, and I was thinking how like even then, how like realizing, okay, maybe I don't want to stay in academia, but it was really hard. I love research. I love teaching. I loved working with faculty. And I loved my dissertation committee, which was kind of funny. I will be honest, I cried when they were like, you got it. And I just looked at them and cried, which I don't think they were expecting if I made them very uncomfortable. But one of the things that I really appreciate is that and this is where I think like one of my like I had a couple of kind of takeaways that helped me in like developing, I'll say, is a fairly unconventional path where I jumped. I feel very lucky that I've been able to work in executive roles in the private sector, in the government sector, in the nonprofit sector, and then run my own business. It's really, it's been incredible. And part of it's having what I call like the advisory board. It was a term my friend shared with me many years ago, is like, get your people. And I think that, over the years, some of the people have stayed, some kind of go in and out, but the ones I really, really like helped was the ones who understood that when they're giving advice, it's for who you are, not for like their own feelings. And it's so important, I think, especially with economists, because there is so much we can do. And I think having those dissertation committee members who said, you might leave academia, but you're not leaving us. And how it held true. I mean, there are ones that I work so closely with now, 20 years later. So I think there's this piece of like having that. The other is recognizing that there was always like an option value, like there was no like ending point. So there was a sense that had been shared. If you leave academia, it could be really difficult to come back. And I think that is true. Like you're not actively researching. It's a muscle I've lost. I research differently. And I love your point, Carly. We research differently. I don't research for publication. I research with a client in mind. So being able to get back in a tenure track processor, that would be tough. However, there's like all these places where we can pivot and shift. And I think that remembering that we have different chapters for different times has been a big part of, I look back over this journey. So being able to, like I said, this is my third time coming back to Open Rivers. I've stepped away 3 times to basically run 3 different organizations. And you go, each time you get that chance. So I think there's a lot more flexibility. And I also appreciate like both, again, like Carly and Kyle, you hit on this, is like, we keep building and learning. Like every time we're interacting, we're doing different tasks. We're jumping into places we never thought we would. We're reading legal contracts, we're getting lawyers. I mean, who knows what else is working with policymakers. We're building out this incredible skill set that just keeps opening doors. And I think that's a piece that also really having the right people and having that openness meant it's never over. Like if you had told me, hey, 20 years ago, you're going to get to, like, I work with orangutan veterinarians in Indonesia and Malaysia, and I've spent a lot of time with them. I've gotten to work with farmers across the US and elsewhere, and it's been amazing. And you go, it's because each opportunity seems to open another one. So I think it's just like remembering all those pieces. And sometimes it's hard because we just learn it by living it. Honestly, it's like, I didn't know that in my 20s, but hopefully you got the right people around you who keep reminding you that.
Something you said there, Shefali, it's kind of was an answer I had thought of for a future prompt that you were going to give Tori, but I'll jump into it now.
Go for it.
Yeah, no, I just feel like in what I do and what I'm hearing you say, and Carly, it'd be true for you, and it's so true in academia. Be happy asking dumb questions. I mean, ask the dumb question because you never know where it might lead. You never know what answers you might get. One of our core values in this firm is curiosity. And I really think that comes back to that. Don't be afraid to ask a dumb question because you just got to work hard to get to the truth sometimes. And boy, it's very important. And it could open doors that you just never thought could be opened.
I just sharing, because I think Tori, and this might also be one of your prompts, I was just thinking of, but it's the
Go for it.
Going, our PhD, we are trained, Minnesota, I loved it, but they train us to be them, right? We're going to be future academics, future researchers, future faculty. And I just remember there were this importance of asking questions and like listening there was one initially, right, when we get to a department, I feel like the beginning, we go and meet everybody, right? You talk to all the professors. And I knew, again, instinctually, I had taken a class, environmental economics. I'm like, I'm going to work with that professor. I didn't even know on what. I'm just like, I love this professor. I love these professors. And I went to meet one of the other very well-known professors who listened to me, heard who I had selected and said, is that a good choice? And I'm like, okay. It's like, well, they're more popular. They're more published. They're well-known professors. Like, why would you choose that one? And I thought, all right. It's interesting. And it did 2 things. One was like the importance of listening to our own gut. So even in the face of it, I understand, like looking back, he was providing me with what is a very commonly understood, and it makes sense. If you're with a well-published professor and you want to go academic, they're going to increase your chances because they know how to do it. But it completely missed the mark for what I was trying to do with my life and who I was. And so I doubled down. I went over to that professor right after I called and said, I'm working with you. I don't even know what we're doing yet, but I'm working with you. So it's this and asking those questions, because then I followed with, hey, do you have any funding? They were just like, no, but let's see what we can do together. And I think that kind of the asking, because then I kept asking, I was like, are you okay if I go work with Lions, even though we're paid by the US Forestry Service? Are you okay if I work for the Minnesota Office of Higher Ed, even though it has literally nothing to do with anything I'm doing? And the right people are going to keep helping you open those doors. And I'll say the flip side, when I left, my dissertation committee member, one of them was very clear and said, if you ever want to come back, it's going to be really tough. And, I am grateful for the directness, because then I could then ask, what is it going to take, right? And again, it's asking these questions. And I would say over the years, there have been ways to research with them. There have been ways to teach. So again, I think it is ask those questions and keep listening to your gut and saying, is this resonating? But because the right people in the right situations, those doors will keep opening. And I think part of it is asking, nothing, I'll say this, nothing is given. I'm actually shocked by how loose so many things that we think are fixed are in this society. And yeah, so you cannot hurt yourself by asking questions and exploring.
And maybe just to add a little quick point on the sort of in and out of academia, I think it does really depend because, for example, somewhere like IFPRI, there's a lot of in and out back. Someone who just who's been at IFPRI for 20 years just, accepted like a senior professor position kind of thing. So it really depends. It's something that at a lot of jobs that are not academic, you'll have to work at actively because what is the deliverable that will satisfy and check the boxes for what you need to do is not maybe the same paper that you would write to get the best publication at a journal. But if you're strategic and you say, okay, I'm going to do this, and actually I'm going to build this little experiment into my survey, and then I can have a paper with that. So it's like a little bit of a way to be kind of enterprising always and keeping your option values open. If that's something that's important to you, you can like think about how to do it. And I think even we were talking, some of us like that also a lecture on the side, for example. So I'm kind of like, okay, I keep my teaching skills up to date at a separate job. And so if at some point I wanted to teach again, I wouldn't be rusty. And so it's just really kind of what you make of it. And not saying that everybody wants to like go back and forth. Like some people that might be important, some people it might not. You might also want to keep your option value of a policy job open while you're in academia and make sure you build up those skills. But it's just about like thinking about which skills you might need to pivot, if pivoting at some point in your career might be important to you.
Right. One thing, Carly, that comes to mind, and I was like spot on, is like places like IFPRI, ARS, there's a whole bunch of like incredible research institutions where there's so much movement. I went to McKinsey. So I think what my committee realized before I did is, yeah, you're not going to be publishing anything. Like if you're, it might be internal, you're going to be in a whole different world. And it helped. There were a lot of other PhDs at McKinsey. And I think I wasn't the only one who came in hoping we would get to have the side. There was no time or brain space for it. And I think part of it's always kind of recognizing, like you said, like where you go and how that, I have friends who are private sector R&D and they publish and it's awesome. Like they're able to. So it really is kind of where that lands. So what changed over time is I won't ever teach in like an academic, like I won't say this, like an academic tenure track kind of position that the roles that I've been teaching are all applied. Like they're consulting classes, they're very applied, like MBA supply chains. So it's like there are opportunities, but I had to follow that path out for 17 years. So I did, it was like close the door, but in a sense, I did kind of like shift the probability away. So I think it's just finding sometimes how close you want to be. And then also, again, figuring out how to make, like you said, make that happen in your role so that you're getting the right balance of the things that matter.
Totally agree.
One of the things that I'm hearing a lot right now is the idea of returning back to academia from industry. And it's possible. And I will mention some of my favorite professors have always worked in industry at one point in their careers because they just have so much context and knowledge and experience to share that places some of these really abstract theoretical concepts in context and to see like, oh, that makes so much more sense. Oh, this connects for me. But one of the things that came up in the discussions about what these field notes would be and what this webinar would look like was a lot of fear and uncertainty, especially in the current situation right now with government positions and academic positions. A lot of funding is disappearing and drying up. We're entering into a brand new world right now. And a lot of academics are looking down this yawning precipice of identity is like, I've only been an academic my entire life, but maybe there's something else out there in industry. I just don't know how to go for it. So if you've been inside of academia forever, how do you develop street cred is one way I heard it, is how do you show you're valuable outside of academia? Another spin on this is how do you recommend people present their research? Kyle, I'd like to start with you because in many ways, you aren't coming from an academic background, but you do have a lot of industry experience. So what are kind of these things you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, not to keep hitting on something similar, but I want somebody that I think someone that shows a depth of curiosity. And when going back to the statement of ask a million questions, if you ask the same question multiple times, that's when it becomes a dumb question. Like if you don't learn from it, if you're not able to take that information and transform or transition how you think of things, then that's when it becomes an issue. Seeing that type of skill set, which what's great about it is I think that does align really well with economists. Is they're going to dig for an answer. It's not going to be stopped at the first question most of the time. At least the ones that the ag economists I've dealt with through my career. Which is a wonderful skill set. Then the next challenge with that is taking the ability to aggregate the data and as quickly as you can, getting as much of an answer as you can. And maybe that gets to 80%, but making a decision and saying, I'm willing to live with my decision, knowing I got to this point. And that's not always easy to show. And you're probably not going to be able to show that through research papers, but if you're transitioning, that's a skill set that matters, is someone that can quickly aggregate information, dissect that information, and go and make a decision off of it. We're never going to have 100% of what we need to make that. But when do you feel comfortable? Are you able to get more comfortable and more accurate quicker than the next person? And again, I think the rigors of ag economics lends itself well to that. I do. So that's where I'd start.
You're problem solving at the end of the day,
That's exactly
but you're
right.
using data to do it. And that's the best way I've been able to describe my position and my role in consulting is like people come and bring me really big, sketchy problems that don't have answers. I work with groundwater in California. You want to talk about a intractable problem, work with groundwater. But
Oh,
at the end of the day, you got to be given data or you're not even given data. You have to either come up with or find the data and use that to come up with a solution. Say, hey, this is our best recommendation based upon the information we've got. Let's try it out. Let's pilot it. Let's go for it. And at the end of the day, you're creating solutions to problems.
couldn't agree more. And like you said there at the end, you have to know when you've aggregated all you're going to aggregate and move that ball forward, and not just keep spinning in the problem you're trying to solve, which is never an easy balance to keep ever. You're frankly going to get it wrong every time you go about it, but that's the challenge in my mind.
Switching gears a little bit. Oh, Carly, jump in.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna sort of put my plus one on that point of that, like one of the major differences that you might see working in like a non-academic institution is like just kind of the ways that things are packaged. Like I don't know that you'd necessarily be doing your research in like such a different way. Like you're gonna be using similar methods, but like you might be working under a different set of constraints. And so what the optimal solution is to how you solve that problem might not be the same as you would if your goal is just an academic paper. And so there's a little bit of kind of thinking a little bit more creatively about what do you do? How do you communicate it to people that are interested in your objectives might not align, right? Like you might be like thinking about how to present things to policymakers, for example, that their objective is something very different than like what your objective is, but you can think about how to package what you're doing in a way such that it's clear, such that it's convincing, depending on again what you're trying to do. But I think it's a lot about this, about the approach, and about you might not get to perfect, and you might not have 5 years, 10 years to write a research paper that's going to be like for your top journal. Like it's a little bit of a different maximization problem, but one that's still interesting in different ways.
We still use the econ speak. Shefali, go ahead.
Absolutely just echo and support everything that Kyle and Carly just said, and just a couple things that really help. And I've noticed when I work with professors and bring them into like private sector situations and consulting. So one is under like the communication, understanding why it matters to the person you're talking to. And so one framework I teach a lot with my clients and use is the 5 levels of meaning. And it's just an easy way to kind of think about like what value is there for different folks, and also how to communicate that is really critical. The speed, not only of the delivery of the communication, the most people don't have time to hear like the objective that they want the conclusion, like help me understand where this is going. The other piece is really know your own value. So one of the big pieces is the people who believe in themselves. Like if you really care about your passion, it comes through, and it's a lot easier for people to say, okay, I see how I can work with you. That value and that passion that is really there. And I think that's a big piece of like, here's how it applies. Here's how it applies in private or nonprofit spaces. And then we talked about this earlier about like jumping in and doing a little bit of everything. So being open to where am I being additive? And it might look different or feel different from where it was in academia, but being able to kind of hold that broad lens and say additive can be everything from mentoring, helping write, contacting people. Like I said, I take so many meeting minutes and like project action notes and like follow up people, and like literally chase people down to my job. And that's because that's what's needed. It's, I always think of that Ted Lasso episode and they're like, what's needed here? It's like, that's it. Like what's needed for this situation. And I think those really increase, and people feel those when they're hiring, when we're consulting, and they really create that bond.
What do you wish each of you had known heading down your particular career path? Because you each have very different journeys that all have such similarities and such different joys that still connect you. And a lot of times we look down hindsight as 2020 and what are some of the obstacles and challenges to keep in mind for these types of roles that you might not think of ordinarily? Something that I think of, for example, is languages. It's really important in many places, especially if you're working in the international development sphere or working with NGOs, is to have language as a background skill. Like I learned that and I started learning Portuguese. It's not one of the top four for FAO, but it's something I was passionate about and it's something I never thought I could do and ended up doing it. And now 6 years later, I'm speaking Portuguese. And that's now a skill I can use in my job. Maybe not in my current context, but it is something that's important to me and I'm able to use when I work with clients in international spaces.
Yes, I just want to add on that. There is something very unique about working in a very international space when you're in a room with a lot of people from different backgrounds at the same time. Like, even if you're all speaking English, there can be a lot of potential for like a miscommunication. And even just like different cultures have different argumentation styles. And so, like, something that I definitely didn't necessarily know right when I went in that it like took me a little bit of a while to adjust to. So maybe I guess I wish I would have known this, but I also learned it on the job is like you have to listen for where the value is and understand that it's not going to be presented the same way that you might say it. So like I joke around, I'm very direct. Like I'll just say like this, and I mean that. And that's like a very, US centric way of of making an argument. But then like I'll talk to like collaborators in some other countries and they're giving a lot of examples. And I was kind of like, why are they giving these examples? But then I was like, oh, because that's how they're conveying the point. Like it's just a different style. And so like I did find myself getting a little bit frustrated and impatient at first, like, okay, like why is this person saying this? But you just have to understand that like everybody communicates in a different way and there's not like one way that's right or wrong. Like there's a way that you've been doing it your whole life, but then that person's been doing it that way their whole life. So like you just kind of have to figure out how to navigate that and understand that, everyone has their different way of approaching it.
And sometimes it's only by experience and meeting that one person. Like my friends from Latin America, I talk to completely differently to my friends from Africa, and in different countries, especially different ways. So yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Carly.
I would say similarly, just my role, I do interact with a lot of people, and I have a naturally trusting personality, which is great. But everybody has their own motivations, and so again, it probably comes back to being willing to dive in and ask the right questions, because the invisible hand of greed does exist, and people are going to look out for their own best interests as they should. So just understand their interests, go through, ask the questions, and make sure you gather enough intel on that. That's something I wish I would have picked up sooner, and certainly have gained with age.
It's again all of the above. They both said like very much lessons. I think one of the biggest ones I love that you asked us these questions, Tori, ahead of time. This became a very reflective exercise for me. I was like, what would I tell myself? It's to hang in there. I was thinking back, I remember I landed in England where I did my master's 2 days before 9/11. I just flown out of New York. And if I look back and you go, what transpired, like there was no point during that period that I thought, you can't even see the other side, right? Like it was just bleak, in every sense of it. And it shaped me, I think it shaped a whole generation and more. And you go, I think of Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, and something really, there's such an incredible book. One of those observations is season the camp, going like, who really was fulfilled? Like, and that was one of the takeaways is the people who were able to kind of focus on the bigger and the process, right? There wasn't an outcome. It wasn't like that was what was, it was the path. And I think that was a piece that I would tell myself is like, however messy it looks, however difficult it is, it's okay. Like it's all okay. Because it's all going to kind of, everything's transient. I think there's so many cultural ways. It's amazing how we say this too shall pass. There almost isn't, I think there isn't like a single religious doctrine or philosophy or belief that doesn't have an element of this is transient, this too shall pass, but it's really, I think in those moments when we're going through these really big seismic things, either personally or societally. So there's also that like hang on to like the meaning, like not giving up on that personal journey or the mission or the quest, like just because we have to pivot and respond. 2008, the recession was horrible. That's when I left and started my job at McKinsey. And it was like mass people, at least they didn't do it, but consulting firms were rescinding contracts. We had actual clients who disappeared to exist overnight. It was horrible. And you're going, how do I hang in there? Did I make the right call? Should I have left academia? There's all kinds of questions. Now I'm sitting here in DC and I'm going through that with friends who are in federal services, and kind of the whole thing got flipped on its head and going, this was supposed to be stable. And you're going, it's okay. Like you don't have to lose the thing that matters to you. It's just, there's going to be some pivoting in the meantime. There's going to be trying to, again, learn from the process, but it is, yeah. So I think it really is just hang in there. And I think of resilience. So I teach this a lot. It's from if you've heard Breast Mom and Atkins, like My Grandmother's Hands, and it's a great book, by the way. It's like on somatic and lots of topics, but he has a definition for resilience I use a lot, and I love it. So I'm just going to share it, and because I think that comes up a lot to me, like others. It's like it's intrinsic, so we're like born with it. It's always there. It's individual and collective, so we're always like connecting, and it's just there. Like it's not something that has to be triggered. We don't have to have difficulty. There's something beautiful about it that's always around us, and I think it's like hanging on to that idea.
What do you think has made you most resilient in these changes? When you look back for each of you, when you look back at your journeys and what it's taken to get to this point in industry, because it never goes a clear path per se. It's ever changing, ever the same at the same time. So when you look at resilience and you look back, what stands out to you as a point where you're like, I can do this. I can do this.
I guess flexibility is one really important thing, part of resilience, being able to adjust how you thought you worked or how you thought you operated and be open to new things. I mean, I'm in the nonprofit space. We used to get a lot of money from USAID, no longer. What does that mean? Well, that means you have to shift. You have to think about, okay, maybe this was a donor that I wasn't going to spend time on in the past because it didn't really seem like worth it, but now I approach it a different way. Or how do I sell this work to more of a commercial audience or what have you? That ability to be flexible, I think, is really important. And that's maybe at a personal level and at an institutional level to be a little bit flexible about what you want to work on. But also what I think is important at the personal level is to remember what's important to you and also allow yourself to take a break and to rest because this seems like one of those very silly things, but like as the world erupts around you and like everything seems chaotic, it like sometimes everything just gets to a point where it feels really important and like you can't take a minute away, but that's like you're gonna burn out so quickly basically that way. And so um be cognizant of like yourself and where you are, because in order to be able to keep going, you need to also be able to take care of yourself and remind yourself that whatever your work is like just one facet of who you are. Like you're a vast person that with a personal life and a social life and a work life and all this stuff. And so like if you just let your work define you and then like something doesn't go well or a grant doesn't come through, then like it feels like a devastating loss. Whereas really it's just a part of your experience, which again, this too shall pass. You apply, you go to the next thing, but take care of yourself, take that moment. You're allowed to feel sad about these things, and then okay, next day, you do another one, you keep going.
I needed to hear that personally, so thank you. Kyle, Shefali, anything to add to that?
To add to absolutely what Carly said, it's like I think there's this I yeah, so I teach this a lot and so I think about it all the time because such a big part of like so I do decision making under uncertainty for like executives, PhDs, like business people, and I guess any of us on this call, all of us, right? How do we do that? And it's like, what does it mean to have resilience? And it's really tied to like, I think compassion. And that's compassion for others and the self. And it's really amazing. Like the more we actually practice it, like just softening, it creates like a lot there. I think the other is like let yourself be sad and upset and angry. Like let yourself be. I think there's this thing of like resilience. Again, it's like it's not an act, it's just being. It's like it's okay to be pissed off. Like that's fine. It's also okay to be joyous. Like it's okay to be everything. I think a third thing you're hitting at Carly is like I think a lot with my coaching clients, a lot around like what does it mean to have the whole like balance, like a portfolio. So it's like we derive meaning and joy and connection from so many different facets of life. And so part of it too is like in these moments, it's really going how like resilience is then going, how are the different elements like coming up for me? And how do I like connect with my community differently? What does my family mean? What about my hobbies? Like it can be any and so many of those things, but really taking time to go, it's almost we're economists, so you can do this very analytically. And I have with some folks, and I love it. It's like going very analytically through the variables and going, how are they? Are they where I want them to be? And there's a tremendous amount of agency in that because you go, hey, this is where I have control. It's another exercise at your groups is like, where do you have control? And when we go through that process, we're like, oh, I actually have it in a lot of places. And that also like really, you know, when I've done that has helped to really tap into that resilience idea.
I just add, maybe it's not the direct answer to that question, but what has helped me at times is honestly reframing what works for my passions. My role with the company of buying farmland and then turning around and leasing it to local operators. My passion. I grew up on a farm. My dad farmed. My brother still farms. I have cousins back on the family farm. My passion is operators, agriculture. Well, the idea of buying land and leasing it to people would suggest I'm in a position of competing with farmers for purchasing land, and would suggest I'm in a position where I am constantly on the other end of a farmer and negotiating leases and how he will rent that ground. All that is true. I don't deny that one bit. But when I approach my job, I look for those opportunities where I can create win-win situations with a farmer. In the end, we are an alternative capital source for farmers. We're not a bank, we're a different equity provider. And so we can help them restructure their business just through the acquisition of land, or help them grow their business when they have when they have a child coming back to the family farm. And so I reframe it to that, and I do it honestly. Like I don't deny that we do have competition at times, but when we find those opportunities, like I'm describing now, those are a lot of times our most successful investments because everybody's aligned, everybody sees the big picture, and so there's certainly things in every job you're going to do that don't exactly fit your vision, specifically in the private sector. But reframe it so it does, where it's also beneficial to your company. You can't sacrifice that, and I certainly don't do that. And so that's another. I guess it kind of came from your statement of flexibility, Carly. So
Kyle, I wish I could have recorded that and share that with my students because I feel like that's a speech I want to give.
This will be
Lucky
recorded,
you, this
Shefali.
I know. Yes, yes.
I'll have to
it'll be
sign
on
off on
YouTube
it.
later. I plan to go back and do my notes as well. Before we transition into our last session, one field note that I've been learning over the last 5 years or so is that connection is in community and relationships and meeting people and having these types of discussions and having those true connections of person to person and seeing the other person cures a whole lot of ills, and it changes and transforms us as individuals. So, real briefly, how do you guys build and maintain relationships in community where you are, professionally or personally?
I would just say honesty goes a long way. Being true to yourself. I certainly don't hide who I am or don't believe I do. And people see through someone being fake 9 times out of 10. And so just be yourself. People respect that in today's world and probably forever at this point. But I certainly do. I don't want to interact with somebody who's not showing their true colors.
And I think that's good advice to end that part of the session on. With that, I want to close with one final question. What is one nugget of hope that you or advice you want folks to walk away with today? We'll go Shefali, Kyle, and end with you, Carly.
A lot of the work over the last year and actually through COVID and that has been like, I think a lot of my role is cheerleading and holding optimism in spaces where, quite frankly, like it's depressing. It's really, really depressing. You go, where is that? And I realize that it is remembering that like that resilience piece of like, look at what our ancestors must have gone through. And I mean like 100 years ago, 200, just the fact that we're all here and you think of like what they would say, it's fascinating to think like those folks went through things we can't even imagine so we can be here. And I think there's this, it kind of goes into this bigger, like we're in this thing that's much bigger than us. And that like really is this message of hope of like, hey, if all those ancestors could do this across the board, and now there's over 8 billion of us, or something truly incredible about our species that keeps kicking. And the other just side pieces, it's really interesting when we look at where innovation comes from with humans. And for whatever reason, it seems to be the most disruption and the most chaos in our history and our situations seems to also birth some of the most amazing like outcomes and solutions. And I'm actually thinking, and we're already seeing it, is that like out of this is like there's a lot of opportunity. And that's hope, is looking at everyone here, everyone around going, where are you seeing the opportunity to do something like bigger and amazing and incredible? And so that's what I hang on to.
Kyle.
Uh, I've struggled on this, but I'll take a unique approach because I happen to be a millennial. Don't judge me too hard, but according to what I've heard, it's very rare for somebody to be in the same company for 14 years as a millennial. And I would just say don't discount the ancillary benefits you might get from your company. Mine would be that, and where when I've potentially had other opportunities, I have built just a ton of trust between my employer and myself and them with me, and maybe that helps that I'm in a small company in that vein. But I don't have a sense of guilt if I have to run out and help my child because they get sick. And I don't think my employer is worried about that because they know I will make up for whatever lost time I have. And there's just a ton of value in that and that equity. I don't know if it'd be hard to build that back up at another place. It's not impossible, but yeah, I think don't disvalue some of those externalities when you get opportunities because those are true value.
Thanks, Kyle. Carly.
Yeah, so I just want to say, I mean, I think this is a tough moment in time, and especially the students that are getting ready to graduate and go get jobs somewhere. It's probably, I mean, I think it's scary out there, and I understand that. But just two things that I think are worth thinking about is like, number one, economics is a toolkit. You can do a lot of things with it. You just have to be creative and think about what that means. And number two, like we need to eat as humans. Like we still need to eat. And so agriculture is going to continue to be important until the AI bots can do all of our jobs, which, maybe at some point. But like, I think we have an important relevance, and you just have to, again, think about how to be creative with those skills. So that's what I'll say.
Perfect. And with that, thank you to each of our panelists for their time and expertise, and thank you to our audience for your enthusiasm and interest in field notes from industry.